that you wrestled. I mean, there weren't, like when their TV program came on, there wasn't, I don't think they were like any interviews shown or done. Every now and then you would see an interview. Like I think we did one for a tag team tournament one year, but back then, what you saw when wrestling came on, all Giant Baba's All Japan show, that's what you saw was wrestling, and it was faster paced. There wasn't no prancing around, and I mean, guys did that. They came over that didn't know. Just like when I came over, I didn't know, and I did some of the things that I had done over here. But when I saw what was going on, and when my first tour, they put me in the tag matches with Stan Hansen about half the time of that first tour, and and when I saw how Stan was working, and I saw, how the top Japanese, Jumbo, Tenryu, all those guys, and even the top Americans, they would let you do whatever you wanted to do. I mean, they would like over here, you work a TV match and you might be able to get in something,
right.
But over there, you be all you could be. Go for what you know. And the top guys, if your stuff was, if you were a pro and knew what you were doing, and they saw that, then they would take any move that you wanted to do. You could be more aggressive. You could present a lot of offense into your matches, and it wasn't just always one-sided. I mean, you could. Baba he didn't care what your name was. He would let you be all you could be, and they encouraged that. They encouraged guys to come over and be offensive,
right.
But the psychology too of the Japanese, they have a different mindset. The Japanese fans are very smart, but they like the underdogs. And if you went out there and you fought as hard, and then they could see it, you were fighting as hard as you could against whoever you may be matched against. Win, lose, or draw, you would sometimes you would get more respect losing a match than you would winning it, because they would see dang man, I mean, he was really fighting as hard as he could. Yep. He got beat, but hey, and
that goes back to what I was talking about earlier too, about how talent needs to look like a threat and not a squash. And obviously the Japanese people prefer the talents. Even if you lose, they respect the fact that you tried and worked hard in that match.
Exactly, and I got that. I had little helpers. Like my first tour, towards the end of the tour, and I had won a few matches, but I'd lost the majority of them, and I was coming about a week, first 4-week tour, about the last week or so. I was coming back from a match. Jumbo called me in a little room. He said, "Come here, Joe," and he said, "Joe, in Japan," he said, "don't worry about winning and losing." He says, "You have a fighting heart." He said, and the people, they see that, so don't worry about winning and losing. And so, I was like, I didn't really know how to take that, but I appreciated it and thanked him.
But it makes perfect sense.
Well, yeah. Once you learn their psychology, I used to watch the sumo a lot. It was on TV all the time over there. And they'd have some smaller guy, maybe, I'll say small guy, maybe 280 or 300 pound guy. It would go out there against a 500 pounder or a 600 pounder. And I mean, they'd get down there and they'd smack into each other, and that little guy would just be tearing it, trying his best with everything he had in his soul to get that big guy, and he'd almost get him where finally the big guy would sling him out. But then people would clap and cheer that little guy, that underdog, because they could see how hard he was trying, and they would cheer him, like I say, sometimes more than the guy that won. And I noticed, like with Kikuchi didn't win a lot of matches, but they loved him because he would just fight as hard as he could, and he'd get the crap beat out of him.
He was a scrapper.
And he'd still be there, and the people respected that.
I know that when you were in Japan that you had a match where you were tagging with Stan Hansen. I want you to tell the story if you remember. If not, I'll tell it for you. But there was a story about you being in a match. It was a tag team match, and you were kind of laying down on the mat. Stan came into the ring, and instead of coming to help you, he actually started kicking you in the head.
Yeah. Yeah, I was in there with I don't know. I think it might have been against Tenryu and Hara or somebody, and they had me in some kind of hole, down. Had me down there, and so So I looked up, and I saw Stan coming in. I said, "Oh God, great, he's coming in to make the save." And so he came in and run over there and stomped me 2 or 3 times in the head. Get up, Deaton, fight, Deaton. I'm thinking, God, I said, okay, so.
He's trying to keep you from dying in the ring.
But Stan saved me a bunch of times too, especially that first couple tours. They try you a little bit, and Stan saw that I was trying hard. I was. It's not, we're not out there trying to hurt each other, but those, you have to learn where those kicks are coming from and how to take them. And once you do that, then you're okay. I mean, they're in there, but they're supposed to be. There's a difference between reckless stiff and safe stiff.
Right.
And as long as it's safe stiff, great, then bring it, because I always liked it, that way. Yep. Because I took the business serious. And
well, I was raised, even just in independent wrestling, which is all I've ever done. But when I was working the independent scene, the one thing that I was taught, and I always stayed true to, was as close as you are to the fans. If you don't lay it in a little bit, if you don't make it a little stiff and make it look legit, they're not going to buy it. And
right.
So I've always laid it in. I've always been known as a little stiff, but only because I want the fans to believe what they see.
Yeah, that was one of the things I loved doing, was going outside of the ring, and you're out there, and you right there, the people are right on you. You bend the guy over and just rear back, and you hit just about as hard as you can swing.
Oh yeah.
Across the back, and you're supposed to be able to take that stuff and across the chest, and the people, you could see it in their faces. They believe,
Yeah.
And
do you have a favorite time of wrestling for you? Was it working for Georgia Championship Wrestling, Jim Crockett, the early days, Japan?
Well, each place and each, I have special memories from all of them.
Do you watch much of the product now?
I watch sometimes. I don't watch it near as much as I used to. But I do, from time to time I watch it. I know it's a different era and different times, and it's, evolution, everything moves, everything changes.
Well, let me ask you something straightforward. Do you think it's better now or worse than it was when you were there? Personally, I like the old days. I like when the guys would get in the ring, they would cut a promo that came from here, not from some script writer in the back. the work rates were better. The stories were delivered better. That's just me. And even in New Japan Pro Wrestling now, they've changed drastically from what you remember. You look at the product now, and now they're a little bit more WWE style now, or ROH maybe, but they're starting to blend over to the American style as well. Do you miss anything from the old days that's not being done anymore?
Yeah, I miss a lot of things from the old days. Like I said, interviews for one thing, but all these high risk moves that and I said, well, when you see a super acrobatic, devastating move performed out there, and the guys or gals, girls or guys, they hop right up from it or kick out, and they go right to something else. They don't give the fans time to absorb what they have done.
Right.
For number one, and number two, it's like Terry Funk said one day. We were watching the young Japanese guys. We went out at the ring there over in Japan. We were watching them work out and stuff. And one of the Japanese guys did, some move off the top rope. And Terry told the other Japanese guy, said, tell the kid to come here. And he came over there, and he was telling the other Japanese guy who spoke English. He said, tell him that you only have so many of those moves in you. So, if you're going to do them when they count. But when they do so many of those moves, then what are you going to do to top that?
Yep. You take away the believability of the match almost immediately. To me, it's like a Gene Autry kind of thing. And I know people out there probably don't know who Gene Autry is, but Gene Autry was a cowboy. And in his old TV shows, when he got hit, he'd hit the ground and stop, get right back up to his feet again. It was like, well, wait a minute. You just took a punch to the face, and then you bounce on the ground like a Super Bowl and bounce right back up again. It was unbelievable. Yeah. And that's what happened to me with wrestling, is that we're getting so far removed from what is believable that the matches don't draw people in like they used to.
Well, yeah, the moves, I want to let this be understood. Those people that, guys and girls that do those moves, they're great.
Oh yeah.
Great moves, athletically and physically. They're just, you really have to be on your, be a good athlete to do those kind of things. And if they would just take their foot off the gas a little bit, and instead of let one of those moves count, let it be a finishing move, and not have to try to top that and top that and top that, and you're going to find it, and we have found it that there's a lot more injuries. Because you can't do that stuff night after night after night. There's no room for error.
Well, what's going to happen when they turn 40, 50, 60 and want to run around on the independent scene again? They can't do those matches anymore because their bodies aren't going to allow them to do those type of high moves anymore.
Yeah.
So they forget the art of storytelling and the process, and it's more moves than storytelling. I guess that's pretty much how I see it. It seems to me like a lot of the high spots are moves that are meant to cover up the inability to tell a story.
Yeah, well, yeah, because that's where the way they have geared everything to outdo the other with these, and they are
hurts
good
the whole
moves.
card too, doesn't it? If you got a guy that's coming out and he's doing 10,000 flips from a corner somewhere, doing remarkable stuff, and then your main event has another guy who does the same thing, well, the impact of his match now is lessened because you saw it all earlier.
Right. That's, goes back to, in the old days, the first three matches, you didn't go out of the ring, and you didn't,
everything built to a crescendo.
Right.
That's how it was usually done back then.
That was the formula, and it worked for decades. And then all of a sudden, in the I guess
last 20 years,
or so, it's just But there's people making a lot of money. And good for them.
Let me ask you, you've worked some huge names in wrestling. I've seen pictures of you with Andre the Giant, for example. Name some of the people that you've been with in that ring,
Wow.
because it's a who's who.
Yeah. Well, I broke in '78 and just about. Okay, I figured. I think I've wrestled around 30 world champions.
Wow.
And no telling how many world tag team champions. But from Dory Jr. and Harley and Jack Briscoe and Dusty and Flair. I don't think I ever worked Flair. We were both heels or whatever. But just Steamboat. I mean,
Just about anybody you would think of.
Piper. Andre, Inoki, Baba.
Was there ever somebody you got in the ring with that even kind of starstruck you a little bit?
Yeah. Well, I've said this before. Anytime I'd get in the ring with Andre or Baba or Andre and Baba, I wrestled against them, and when they were a tag, Andre and Baba. That was more of a spiritual thing to me than it was anything else, because how many Andre the Giants do you see in a lifetime, let alone interact with?
Absolutely.
How many giant, I mean, Andre, 1 in a trillion, maybe, a human being. Baba, the same thing. And it was different than any other wrestler that I was ever out there with. And because I looked at it like that, in that perspective, not just, is this another wrestler or a big guy or giant or whatever. I mean, it really was I'm in here with somebody I'll never see another like, or and never come close to seeing or being around them or being in the dressing room or
even having a match against somebody like that. How many men have actually had a match against Andre? Think about that.
Right.
Very few.
I mean, me and Hoss wrestled Andre and Inoki in Hawaii. And that was the first time I had met either one of them. And, and I knew Andre. I didn't know a whole lot about Inoki, other than he was the one who did the Muhammad Ali and
Right.
wrestler boxer thing. But and that was quite a thrill to wrestle Andre. And he worked with us. He sold for us. And that was in 1985. That was for Leah Mavia over in Hawaii.